The Divine Comedy is easily my favorite piece of literature of all time because of its elements of surprise and just the anticipation of what's going to happen next. From the punishments in Inferno to even the way God is described, you literally cannot guess what the hell is going to happen next. Not to mention a lot of his controversial but really interesting beliefs and even some of the tangents that he went on. Though his epic is filled with so many digressions, I don't think any come close to his rant about Italy and Purgatorio. But before diving into his rant, it's pretty important to first understand the historical context at the time of Dante writing the Divine Comedy. So Dante was born into a period of war and philosophical discourse between two factions, the Ghibellines, who were on the side of the Holy Roman Empire, and the Guelphs, who sided with the Pope. Even if you know the littlest bit about Dante, then you should know that he obviously sided with the Guelphs. I mean, the guy was Catholic, and he believed so much in their cause that in 1289, he actually fought in the Battle of Campaldino, where he helped defeat the Ghibellines. Unfortunately for Dante, in 1294, Pope Boniface VIII ascended to the papacy, though many Florentines weren't really happy with him. I mean, the guy most likely killed his predecessor, Celestine V. The Florentines also didn't really like how quick he was to spread his political ideology, not to mention how he had the prior pope arrested and left for dead. All of the tension and dissatisfaction with the state of Italy led to the Guelphs splitting into two more factions, the Black Guelphs and the White Guelphs. And when it came time to side with a faction, Dante chose the White Guelphs. That split made it much, much easier for the French to invade Florence, where they sacked and appointed a government full of Black Guelphs. Not to mention that this is 1301, so this should go without saying, but communication wasn't nearly as good as it is today and was so much harder to achieve. So Florence decided to send a delegation with Dante down to Rome in order to figure out exactly what was going on in Florence. So when the Black Guelphs finally took over, they unfortunately killed all of the White Guelphs, and any that escaped were immediately sentenced to exile. Yeah, that's a lot. So let's see what he needs to say about Italy after his exile. But again, it's really important to add context here. So before the rant, Dante and Virgil met a spirit in Ante Purgatorio named Sordello. Sordello, who was described as solitary and was pretty well guarded, got super geeked when he found out that Virgil was from the same city as him. So much so that they even hugged. Like, imagine hugging a stranger because you find out you're from the same city. That's so crazy. So Dante, standing right next to them and witnessing everything, began reflecting on the current state of Italy, and he went in hard. To modernize his first point, Dante would hate when, let's say, people from like Philly would see other people from Philly and New Jersey, and they would go to each other and be like, "Hey, go Birds," but then would act terrible to each other when they're neighbors in Philly. He also called Italy an inn of sorrows and squalid, even making the metaphor of a ship without a helmsman, meaning it's without direction. He even called Italy a queen of brothels. Never heard something like that before. But I will say, by far the most interesting part of his two-page rant is a metaphor he gave. What use was there in a Justinian's mending your bridle when the saddle's empty? Indeed, were there no reins, your shame were less. Ah, you, who have understood what God ordained, would then attend to things devout, and in the saddle would surely allow Caesar to sit. See how this beast turns fierce because there are no spurs that would correct it, since you have laid your hands upon the bit. I think splitting this into three parts to break it down would be easiest. I think the first part is pretty interesting and can mean two things. The mending the bridle can mean him establishing order within Italy and the Roman Empire as a whole, while the saddle being empty can point to Italy not having a leader. Though I think this can also refer to how Justinian promoted, defended, and upheld Orthodox teachings, yet no one was seriously following in Jesus' footsteps. The second part states an interesting yet I think pretty truthful philosophical idea. See, if there were no laws or restraints against chaos, then no one would feel shame for it. But there are laws in place, and I think that's the main reason these quote-unquote evils and debated evils are looked down upon. The last part is also really interesting, considering the historical context at the time. See, he says, if people understood what God intended for them, then they would allow the proper religious leaders to lead the country. But because they don't, the city is going to go out of control because there's no one to guide the people. He then finishes the last part by referring to Italy as a wild beast that has no great leader to guide it forward. Now, in typical Divine Comedy fashion, I think you know what happens next. He, of course, goes on a tirade about someone. This time, Albert I of Habsburg. Oh, wow, such a good looking gentleman. Again, though, I think what he says next can have two meanings. He thinks that Albert has neglected his duties as a leader instead of leading his people. Or it can mean that he neglected his duties as a Christian and led his people astray. But I think it might mean both. And because of Albert and his father's continuous efforts to try invading nearby lands, Dante says, and I quote, "Upon your blood may the just judgment of the stars descend with signs so strange and plain that your successor has to feel its terror." Jesus, dude, his son? Damn. And after all that, he's still not done with Albert. He immediately addresses him as one who doesn't pay attention to Italy's problems, and he invites him to come and see Italy's feuding factions and look at their suffering. He then addresses him as a cruel one and tells him not only to pay attention to their he's caused, but also to heal it. And he even points out how powerful emperors in other countries are hopeless and even uncomfortable in their current situation. He then makes a really cool personification, but gets a little dramatic to do so. He says, "Come, see your Rome who, widowed and alone, weeps bitterly. Both day and night, she moans, 'My Caesar, why are you not by my side?'" From this, it's pretty obvious that he not only thinks highly of Julius Caesar's rule and leadership, but that Italy needs another leader just like him. Dante again gets sarcastic and tells Albert to come and see how people love each other so much in Italy. But wait a second, we know that's not really true. So in Dante's eyes, he thinks that should give Albert even more reason and more obligation to come and help Italy. He then takes it a step further by saying that if you don't care about helping Italy in order to help its people, at least care about your reputation enough to help Italy. He then goes on to claim that all of Italy's towns are filled with corrupt tyrants, and anyone who gets involved with politics will soon turn into Marcellus, who he views as a rebel who caused conflict. Dante, seeming to feel like he doesn't know what to really do, decides to call it to God by referring to him as the highest Jove. He decided to ask God if he stopped caring or even paying attention to what's going on in Italy, or is it maybe all part of his plan that's just too complex for us humans to understand? Dante continues his sarcasm, this time targeted towards Florence. He pokes fun of how they think they're exempt from everything he said because their people are striving. He even says that they volunteer for public service, even when no one asks them to. But this public service is just them judging people. And of course it wouldn't be Dante if it stopped right there. So he continued the sarcasm, saying that though Athens and Lacedaemon are civil cities, compared to Florence, they haven't even scratched the surface of righteousness. But then Dante makes a great point, alluding to whenever Florence makes some progress, it soon after becomes undone. And this is so relevant in today's world, especially the flip-flop policies in the US. Similarly, he complains about how Florence keeps changing its laws, currencies, customs, and political offices due to unstable leadership, and even its constantly changing citizens, likely due to faction wars at that time. Dante capped off his entire discretion by using a simile of a sick woman lying in a comfortable bed, yet she can't get comfortable, just like how Florence should be in a comfortable and stable position, yet they still can't find any stability and continue to be in a restless state. This right here is the reason I love the Divine Comedy and decided to make this YouTube channel, to share the small but I think really important parts like this. I don't think the Divine Comedy is talked about enough on YouTube, to be honest. And even when it is, they focus way too much on the gory parts of Inferno. But there's so much more to this epic than just that. And it's my mission to share that. Thank you so much for watching and supporting my first video. I truly hope you enjoyed.